Hello everyone, my name is Matt or Matabulous and I am a 16-year-old indie game developer. This is the Indie Dev Chat and I am here with Jordan, who is part of the Skjold team, who is developing Battle Siege Royale. Hello.
Hi,
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I've been working on my mobile game quite a bit, preparing a project for Ludum Dare as well. Yeah, it's been
Very
quite a
nice.
fun day. Yeah, it's been quite easy going. Just working on like a sort of like a tutorial screen on my game, so that should be quite fun. But yeah. So
Okay, cool.
tell us about what you do for those who aren't aware of your work.
So I'm the founder of Skjold Game Studio. We're a or a five-person team. We have a 3D artist. I'm the programmer. Will does marketing. So if you've had contact with us on Twitter, which is our most active social platform, you've probably heard from Will, or any of the posts that you've seen were probably from him. I do a little bit on there, but not nearly as much as he does. He's very active. We have a 2D artist from the Philippines named Newt, and he does all of the user interface and promo art. And we have a musician from Brazil named Williams, and that's pretty much our whole team. So yeah, like I said, I founded Skjold. I fund it through my construction business, so that's how I keep everybody paid, and I do the programming.
hmm that's very that sounds like a very robust team. So how long have you been like how long has the team been up and running?
So I started working on Battle Siege Royale completely alone in April. Started bringing people on around May, June. That's when we brought Will on for marketing. He's been probably second to me the most active person on the team. Um, so yeah, not too long.
Yeah,
Just
a few months.
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it looks like you made a lot of progress already, and that's really nice to see. So, um, actually, yeah, I think I've never really I've never spoken to Will, but like I've always known of him. You know what I mean? I'm sort of one
Hmm.
of the people that you sort of know, but you don't know. so,
Right.
so, what inspired you to actually get into game development then?
Well, when I was younger, I'm 31 by the way, so I'm an old man. But when I was younger, when I was in my teens, when I was 13, the game Morrowind came out. And I had done a little bit of modding with Notepad, building custom levels for a game called Carnivores. I had done some 2D stuff with the Infinity Engine, Icewind Dale, Baldur's Gate. Um, but then this game Morrowind came out, and it was this 3D game, came with something called the Elder Scrolls Construction Set, and it was basically all of the developer tools put in the hands of the players. And so I started doing level design on that, and started learning how to 3D model with Blender, and started basically recreating all of Middle Earth for Morrowind. That was called the MERP project, and that eventually became an Oblivion mod, and then eventually became a Skyrim mod, and then anybody that knows the modding history will probably know that that was eventually ceased and desisted by Warner Brothers, who owns the rights for Middle Earth. Um, so yeah, I stepped away from modding for quite a while. Um, Actually went and joined the rodeo circuit, wanted to be a cowboy. So I did that. I had some success with it. Went to the circuit finals in 2014. Um, Kind of accomplished some goals there. Met my wife, got married, had a baby, and started a construction company. And so, because I wasn't on the road all the time anymore, because I wasn't in the rodeo circuit anymore, I kind of had some time in the evenings. And I fired up Blender and I started messing around with it a little bit. This was around 2016. Um, Kind of started making some more Morrowind mods again, just for fun as a hobby.
Hmm
Um, And I had just started my own business. I was kind of branching out as an entrepreneur. I didn't know how it was going to go, but I found that I kind of had a knack for running a business, and I thought, I spend a lot of hours out of the house, away from my newborn son and my wife, um, running this construction business. And I thought, what if I applied my business and um, modding skills towards something that would actually allow me to work from home and do something that I enjoy? Because I mean, let's face it, I don't know anybody that actually enjoys doing construction. I enjoy it to an extent for sure, but it's not nearly as much fun as game programming or 3D modeling.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought, yeah, let's launch a game studio, see how it goes. So I started taking some courses on GameDev.tv to learn C++ programming for the Unreal Engine. Kind of got some basics and started making Battle Siege Royale, and the rest is history.
Nice. I mean, I remember. I think the first time I started learning game dev was it was 2 years ago, and that was a Udemy course about Unreal Engine. But I never really felt too connected with Unreal Engine, and then I moved on to Unity. So yeah, I mean, I might actually go back to Unreal Engine someday. Just sort of like, it was like a nostalgia sort of thing to do. I mean, it's definitely something is worth considering for me, because obviously recently I've been working on quite a few different projects, and I haven't had too much luck really, like financially. There's nothing has come in yet because I haven't had that. I haven't released a commercial game, so I guess the real objective for me is to work on this big project as well as learning other stuff just in case. So right now I've got my bigger project, but then I'm also working on a mobile game, because a mobile game could be like, if it went big, then it could get big, if you know what I mean. And also just for the sake of experience as well, because a mobile game is completely different to a PC game, and then
Oh, absolutely.
so yeah, and it's different because even though it's the same, like even though I'm still doing 2D, I'm like moving slowly away from it. Like I also started work on like a little 3D project for my dad. Basically, I'm gonna give it to him as a birthday gift. So I've got like 40 days to do that. But yeah, this past month has been really just learning new stuff, because I do miss learning stuff. I have just sort of disposed of that sort of learning, like I don't know what you would call it, but yeah, I mean I haven't really focused on learning. I've just been focusing on staying where I was, which obviously doesn't really benefit you too much. So right. Yeah, I mean, learning stuff definitely keeps you motivated as well. So
yeah, I think using the Unity engine for a mobile platform is very wise. I know that Unreal's capable of it, but I think that you have a lot more freedom and flexibility with Unity. And you're totally right. While you're working on a project and you don't have any cash flow coming in, it definitely is a financial burden to work on a game until you can, start recouping some of that time that you've spent on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, continuing education is just so vital. I mean, throughout your entire career, because technology is constantly changing, coding is constantly changing, and so yeah, it's something that I think all of us as game developers, continuing education and balancing those things like you were talking about, selecting a game engine for your goals, and considering the financial burden of not having an income while you're working on that game are all really important factors to juggle, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, for me it's not too big of an issue because I've got the financial support from my parents to like not have to worry about anything like that, but obviously at the same time I still want to prove, like, I guess it's more the fact that I want to prove to my parents that it is something that I can do as a job, if you know what I mean. Because I don't think they're supportive of what I'm doing, but they're not I guess they're not they're skeptical, right? So
Right.
which is fair. I think that's quite it's good that they're skeptical because it keeps me realistic.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so yeah.
Well, I can totally relate to that. Not having support from parents. I grew up with my aunt and uncle, off and on, and my uncle being a carpenter, which is part of the reason that I decided to start a start a construction business. Um, I had gotten accepted to Westwood College in Denver for game design, and he had kind of been like, Jordan, I don't think you should go to college for something that you're not going to find a job in, and I think you should maybe stick with construction where you know you're always going
Mm-hmm.
to have a job. And he kind of talked me out of it, and otherwise I might have gone straight to school for game design, and might be a lot further than I am now even, which who knows, but that's all speculation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess having done the construction work now, it's you had that backup, so if something did go wrong, then it would be fine. So I guess it is good that your uncle talked you out of it, even though I mean, I don't know, it's hard to say because like I guess I don't think I don't really want to go into education for like well game design education like too much. I mean, obviously I'm studying game design media in college, but like that's as far as I want to go. I don't want to go too far because if if it's not what I want, then it's gonna turn out really bad for me. So
Yeah.
I guess having like a backup job is always really important. I don't I think people really like I think some people quitting their jobs and stuff like that's something that I don't think is a really wise decision. Because obviously you have to make sure that your first game is a success, and then you have to make sure that after that you make a second game in time to have another financial success. Like you have to keep working so hard, and like a first game isn't gonna last too long. Like obviously it's just gonna lower in like how much money you'll get from it. So you have to keep pumping out loads of games, and then you know what's to say that the second game will definitely be a financial success. You may be on your third
Right.
game without any financial success, and you may just sort of be just able to um, keep yourself stable, which I mean it's good to be stable, but at the same time you obviously want some sort of leisure because
Hmm.
that's how our brains work. We can't just have a stable sort of like environment and not have anything else to do. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the major challenges of running a game studio as your sole source of income is the prospect that you'll have a financial failure, a game that doesn't take off. And I mean, especially in the indie game sector, if you sell 1,000 copies of a game, it would be quote unquote successful by most indie standards.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I guess my advice would be to always be adaptable and resourceful in your approach of if you're going to do this for a living, and your goal is to financially support yourself and your family with an indie game studio. You've got to constantly be reading into the feedback that you're getting and making adjustments accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't have a clear direction towards success, and obviously financial success comes from appealing to the consumer. The consumer ultimately
Yeah.
is the one that's going to put money in your pocket. So as much as maybe you want to make, like, I love role-playing games, Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, the Elder Scrolls series, even The Witcher to an extent, which my wife plays more than I do, but those kinds of games are my kinds of games. So that's what I enjoy. But a 5-person team trying to build an Elder Scrolls game would inevitably fail. It's just completely unrealistic. So we went with a platform that at the time I thought would be relatively successful and relatively easy to code. We went with a siege-based battle royale game, and battle royales have relatively simple mechanics,
Mm-hmm.
and using siege weapons instead of like first person shooter style, we didn't have to do a ton of animation. And so
Right.
that was
Yeah.
kind of like, keep a limited scope with a platform that's going to appeal to a large audience, and then make adjustments as we get feedback. And I really believe that's kind of the key to running a successful studio is
Mm-hmm.
or any studio, whether it's AAA
Yeah.
or indie.
Yeah. I mean, I think, um, yeah, appealing to the consumer is obviously one of the most important things, and a lot of developers that well, not that I know personally, but that I know of, they haven't appealed to their audiences enough, and that does end really badly for them because they have a bad reputation, and then why would they buy your second game or whatever? There's that. If you can pick up that reputation, then you'll be able to keep yourself even more stable than if you were to just sort of make a game and not care about what people were saying about it. I mean, sure, it's good to have tough skin and thick skin about it, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you're not, thickening it too much that you just sort of ignore it. Obviously, you
Hmm.
have to take everything on board, even if it's like the most hateful thing ever. You've got to consider, well, maybe, the reason they're saying this is because there is something wrong with whatever they're talking about. And even though they may be exaggerating, because, a lot of gamers do that, um, you still got to take it on board, and not a lot of developers do that. They sort of just ignore it. And I think that's the problem
Right.
with AAA studios as well. I mean, obviously they have no problem with finance. That's nothing to them. But the reputation of them, they just don't really. They sort of shrug it off because of their money, right? So,
Yeah, there's less incentive to put the effort there.
mhm. And I think that's the common misconception with indie game developers is that we don't have to do it, even though actually it's one of the most important things to grow a community as an indie developer. That then you have loads of people behind you, loads of people backing you up, and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head there with, having a thick skin but an open mind, not being so thick that you're not willing to take any feedback at all, but not being so wearing your heart on your sleeve so much that every time somebody gives you negative comment, it's catastrophic
Yeah.
to your to your psyche.
Hmm.
Um, I've heard it said, I think it was Ask Game Dev. They have a YouTube channel that's
Ah, yeah,
really
yeah,
helpful.
yeah.
Um, I think I had heard on one of their videos, don't try to make a game for everyone and don't try to make a game for no one. You want to kind of be in the middle there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I heard somewhere that you should make sure that you know what audience you're aiming for, and aim for that rather than going for everyone, which obviously that's going to really show. If you try and put in aspects of other games into your game that don't fit the general idea, then obviously
Hmm.
that's just, that's going to end so badly for
Right.
you.
Yeah, I mean, if I get a Twitter comment from somebody that says I hate medieval games, it's not going to affect me nearly as much. I'm gonna, well, this game's probably just not for you because we do medieval and fantasy themed games. That's what we like. But if
Hmm.
somebody says, yeah, I don't really like the way that the crosshair doesn't really accurately show where the projectile is going, that's actually genuine feedback.
Yeah, that's
That's
actually
somebody
something you
that
can take on board. Yeah.
somebody played the game that for one, yeah, they actually fired the game up and played it, so that's a huge thing in and of itself. And then secondly, they were actually um, thoughtful enough to think about what would make this game better.
Hmm.
And so sometimes you just get negative feedback without any kind of even a hint at a solution. It's just, well, I don't like it, and that's a little too open ended to do anything with. And other times you get I wouldn't call it negative feedback, but you get criticism that you can actually work with, something that is logistical or visual. I don't really like the stylized um, model that you have mixed in with a lot of photo real models. Like that's something that makes sense.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. That makes so much sense. So, yeah. I don't know. It's something you have to sort of juggle with, I guess. Because for me, I've been obviously with my YouTube channel. It's having thick skin has been quite important. So, I mean, I haven't really got that much hate at all. Actually, I've only got like one, I think. But like even that was like really. I don't even know what to say. Like, he was basically saying that one of the challenge videos I did was really bad and I would never learn anything from it. And he was using like really vulgar language and everything, and I was just like, what? And then you have people that, you know, like, they're just constructive. So yeah, I mean, that's the problem with doing YouTube as well. Obviously, you won't be able to put your input in this, but one of the things with YouTube is that like the viewers are obviously going to be targeted to what videos you're making, right? So obviously I'm making game development videos, so I get loads of game developers, whereas that may not be a very good thing for me in the long run, maybe not, but like that's why I'm trying to sort of diversify the content that I create. Like obviously, like these indie dev chats, for example, you know, they're not really too game development heavy. They're sort of like, I guess, in the middle. And then obviously I have indie plays, which is literally me playing other games, and then you just have like, you know, that's about it really. But I guess it's sort of hard to manage because, you know, each I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. I've lost my train of thought.
No, I get what you're saying though. I mean, being able to diversify, because you're on so many platforms. You're on Twitter, you're on YouTube. You're doing different things between just playing games and talking about games and developing games, and so it gives you a pretty broad perspective. And I think people are drawn to that broad perspective because a lot of people want to know a lot of things about a lot of things.
Yeah, very very wise words. People want to know a lot of things about a lot of things. Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I completely understand. Yeah, that makes sense. So these questions really are hard to sort of direct towards what we have just been speaking about. What do you think has been the best source of help for your game development? Like whether that be like learning resources and stuff like that.
You know, Ben Tristram, who's also from the UK,
Yeah.
and he runs GameDev.tv. He's been a huge help. Both his team, Game Dev TV, and him personally, just because you know, he responds directly to his students, which I think is really cool. Considering that he has 500,000 students that have signed up for his courses over the years, and to be able to still to still be able to reach out to students on an individual level and be like, hey, how you doing, mate, and the whole lot was actually really kind of encouraging for me, you know, because, you know, not everybody after 500,000 students would still be that tenacious about, you know, being that individual with someone. And you know, if he sees talent, he fosters that, you know. So that's another thing I really appreciate is I kind of reached out to him and I was like, hey, you know, we're starting this Kickstarter, and you know, your courses have taught me a lot, and yada yada yada. And he's like, oh, here's the credentials to my blog. Why don't you just log in and post a blog about your Kickstarter? And I was like, wow, thank you. You know, that was so. He and his team have been just monumental in helping this studio. Obviously, I learned all of my C++ programming from Ben Tristram in the Udemy course over there.
I think we might have learned the same course partly, because I was watching one of them a couple years back, and yeah, I mean, I was like one of the first games was like, oh, it was a text-based game, right?
Bulls and Cows?
Yeah, that is it. Oh my god.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and
that was so much fun. I just loved that.
Yeah, I love that too.
I loved making that little DOS prompt video game, you know. I mean, it kind of reminded me of Oregon Trail, and while I was programming that, every once in a while I'd take a break and go play some classic Oregon Trail.
Yeah, I mean, I think I I remember I was like, oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna challenge myself, and I put in the whole Oxford Dictionary into the game. So that was
Oh wow! So
that
you
that
really
brings
took that to a whole new level.
yeah, that brings so many memories back. But I don't think I really. I think the first time you go into I booted up Unreal Engine, and I just disliked the interface. And I think it was more the fact that I was just overwhelmed, and I didn't really give it the time of day, which I really should have done. So maybe I'll go back to that course one day and try and relearn a bit of Unreal Engine again, because I mean it's a very good skill to have under my belt, because obviously I already have Unity with me, Unity, Python, etc. That would look really a lot better on me. So
On your resume for sure.
yeah, exactly.
And I think like we're doing a battle royale. Obviously, battle royales were pioneered in the Unreal Engine with PUBG and Fortnite,
Hmm.
and so the Unreal Engine was just a very obvious choice for us for what our goals were. But I think depending on what your goals are as a game developer, I think Unity is a great engine.
Yeah.
I mean, by far, much more widely used than Unreal by the indie devs. So
Hmm. And I think
I
also, like Unity, it's like I think it's more, I don't know, like it's more user friendly, most definitely. I mean, Unreal Engine, I'm not sure if they've changed up their interface in the past 2 years, which I would assume they have done. Like I was just honestly, I really hated like how it looked, but obviously, I knew how powerful the engine was as well. I don't know. It's weird. I think it was more the fact that like I actually have no idea why I went for Unity. I think it was just because I knew about it, right? And also like a lot of the games that I played a while back, like I think it was 6 years ago, there was, do you know Gang Beasts?
I can't say that I'm familiar with it, but is it a platformer?
Uh, no, it's like a physics-based brawler sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
What other examples are there? I don't really know. Anyway, that was one of the games that I like first started playing, and that was made with Unity. Um, I think I played the alpha build of that, so that was really early on in the development. Jeez, that's weird. And yeah, I think that's also what influenced my decision to go to Unity, maybe.
Yeah,
But
makes sense.
hmm Um, so obviously, you've stated that you've only been doing it for a few months. So do you have any tips for people starting out?
Yeah, actually, I just wrote a blog on this for GameDev.tv actually. So if
Oh.
I just pull this up, I can just read directly from it. Um, so yeah, I mean, my first tip is start and these are just things that worked for me personally. I know each person's different, so
Hmm.
this isn't in any necessary order of priority. For me, they are, but for someone else, some of these tips might not even apply. Number three is learn to work with a team. Some people are just naturally team players, and maybe that's not a skill that they struggle with, But
Right, right.
for me, number one was starting a reasonably sized project, especially for your first. And so I wrote here, from the beginning, I knew that I needed to be careful about how ambitious of a project I would want to take on. I said I have a propensity towards starting large projects that are a bit out of the scope of practicality. Like I was talking about Middle Earth role playing, our mod project for Morrowind and Oblivion and eventually Skyrim, and a few other total conversion landmass mods. And so I know what it's like to bite off more than I can chew and have something that's out of the scope of being quote unquote finishable.
Hmm.
Number two is build a community. I think everybody knows this.
Yeah.
If you don't have a community, nobody what your game is. No, I mean, unless you're EA Games and you just drop Apex Legends without any pre-announcement. But they are the exception to the rule. We have what maybe 20,000 games a year coming out between
Yeah.
AAA and indie, and
That's a minimum as well. I think it's gone
yeah,
up a
maybe
lot.
more.
Yeah.
And you know, one studio, EA Games, the biggest studios in the world, was able to drop a game without any prior announcements and have it be successful. So if you want to take your chances, against a AAA studio, 1 in 20,000 or even more, then yeah, don't worry about building a community. But if you want to be successful, maybe yeah, I started a Discord server immediately as soon as I started working on this game. But I waited until June to start social media pages just because I didn't think it was good enough to show off. And I wrote, that was a mistake. I should have immediately started a Twitter, a Facebook, and Instagram and started showing what I was working on, even though it wasn't much to show. I could have started building followers a lot sooner. We're almost up to 1,000 followers on Twitter now. Wow. But we would have probably been further than that if I had just started posting things right away.
Yeah.
Number 3, I wrote, learn to work with the team. And I wrote, I can relate to most programmers. I like doing everything myself, and I don't like relying on other people. But I had to learn to get over this in order to be successful. We've all heard that it's said, no man is an island, and it's true. Well, some of us are capable of marketing, programming, 3D modeling, gameplay mechanics completely alone. Even the most solo of solo devs still need contacts, community, fans, players, and press to help them put their games in the laps of their audience. So I know it can be hard to let go of your quote-unquote perfect vision of your game when other people start creating content for it, but you have to learn to let your partners express the same level of creative freedom that you also desire as an indie developer. And so I wrote, I've learned from past mod projects that if I get too tunnel vision about how a game should be, I'll lose my partners, and nothing's worse than trying to put together an entire universe by yourself when you have deadlines. Now, with mod projects, you don't have deadlines, but with indie games, you do. So,
yeah.
Number 4, I wrote, don't be afraid to ask. And so this is my blog on gamedev.tv. And I wrote, the only reason I have the opportunity to write this blog and share with you folks is because I ask. Ask, seek, knock, repeat. Sure, a few folks might get peeved at your persistence, but most people admire tenacity and energy. This ties in with my thoughts above. Again, no man is an island. So don't be afraid to reach out to other developers, press, other entrepreneurs, etc. Even if these people seem quote unquote better or more experienced than you, reach out. So when I was in the rodeo circuit, some of the best advice that I was given was always surround yourself with people that are better than you, people that are already where you want to be, because being around those kinds of people forces you to rise to the occasion. And that advice worked really well for me in the rodeo circuit. And so I apply it also with the game studio.
Right, yeah.
And number 5, I wrote, take time to relax. Be tenacious, energetic, and well-informed. Research your butt off. Work hard and keep trying, even after a few minor setbacks. But always remember to relax about the things you can't control. If somebody rips into your project, don't lose sleep at night over it. If you're stressed about how your Kickstarter will go take a walk, spend some time with friends and family, seek out a bit of encouragement. Because we as developers, we're used to having complete control over our environments because we're creating those environments from scratch. But you can't control how other people are going to react towards your creations. So just relax. If you can't have fun doing what you love, then where can you have fun? So at the end of the day, even the worst failure is still an opportunity to learn something. So that's like my 5 pieces of advice for somebody that's just starting out in the indie game development sector.
Well, that was very informative.
Thank you.
Yeah, moving to that 4th point, which was oh, damn it. I was gonna say something.
Here, let me pull it back again? Up here. I'm pulling it up. Sorry, I closed the tab and. Number 4 was don't be afraid to ask.
Right, yeah, and surrounding people surrounding yourself with people that are better than you. Yeah, I've definitely done that. So you may have noticed that my indie dev chats, the other episodes, I've spoken to people like Blackthorn Prod. I've spoken to people like Danny. I've spoken to people like Jonas Tyrola, who are all, they're bigger content creators. They're where I would like to be in the foreseeable future, and they're also really talented people as well. So yeah, again, they are definitely my driving force for motivation and inspiration, etc. I've honestly, I look back on them and I'm just like, well, if they can do it, why can't I do it? And then that sort of pushes me to. So I guess it's a really good driving force to have role models or aspirations. So yeah, I think that's one of the most important things that not a lot of people have the courage to do. And honestly, when I messaged Blackthorn Prod back in, I think it was January sort of time, I had no idea he would get back to me. I was like, oh yeah, there's no chance. Like this guy with however many subscribers he had back then, there's no way he'll get back to me. But you know, he got back to me because one, the community is really nice, and two, I asked nicely as well. A lot of developers I've noticed sometimes if they want something, and now actually not a lot of them, it's a couple of them, really like, you know, anomalies in the community. Sometimes they can be quite rude in how they ask for things, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, you know, we we as game developers, we need to support each other. There's literally only a like small minority of us out of the whole world working on games, and you know, we can't just like treat each other badly, because then that will just demotivate everyone else as well. So it's all a big round circle.
I think you're so right. It's so important for us as indie developers to support each other. And I know sometimes we think, oh, well, maybe we're competition for each other, but that's not really how it is with indies. It might be that way with AAA, but even with AAA, if a consumer is on a Steam page looking at Skyrim and it says other relevant games, Witcher, they're not going to say, well, should I buy Skyrim or should I buy The Witcher? They're going to say, which one should I buy first? Because they're going to end up playing both of them. I mean, if that's the kind of game that you're into, you're going to buy both. I know I did anyway. And all of my friends have. So, you know, if you've played PUBG, you've played Fortnite, you've played Apex Legends, and you know, you've gotten bored with those and you're looking for a new Battle Royale experience, you know, there's a plethora of them, obviously.
Come on, plug your game.
Popping up everywhere. But it's not like just because my friend's making a Battle Royale and I'm making a Battle Royale that somehow now we have to be rivals. You know, we can definitely offer each other retweets, you know, promote each other's YouTube channels, etc.
Because you'll have something else to share as well. You'll have your own skills that, you know, you've developed, and actually, you know, the other developer that you've helped out can help you out by doing the same thing, and it's all like it's a big giant circle.
Yeah, and we kind of almost have this micro economy in the indie game sector where, you know, it's kind of like you support me, I'll support you, and it's kind of like we all live on an island with 100 coconuts, you know, and we're all sharing coconuts.
Yeah. Okay, so next topic, Kickstarter. Obviously, I mean, did you do a Kickstarter or?
Yeah, we actually just launched our Kickstarter yesterday.
Oh, damn.
And so I don't think it's even cycled through a full 24 hours yet. But yeah, I can't really share a link over a podcast because it's HTTPS .
No, the link will be in the description, so if you can, you know, go and support the project. So. But yeah, like I don't really know much about Kickstarter, I'll be honest. I've sort of like, I guess I've seen other developers doing it, and I haven't really like dabbled in it myself because I haven't had to. But yeah, like, are there any experiences that you've had with it?
Well, this is our first time, so I'll be honest with you. I have very little idea of Kickstarter as well. But I would say the most important thing is that you bring your community with you to Kickstarter. You can't just like post a Kickstarter and be like, hey, people are just going to stumble on my project and start, you know, supporting it. That doesn't happen.
Yeah,
you know. And so I would say, you know, put in the time, maybe have close to 1,000 Twitter followers, you know, get out there on several different platforms. Our major platforms are IndieDB, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And so that's where we're putting 99% of our foot out on. And so, you know, we go out and we advertise in those platforms. Hey guys, we're doing a Kickstarter right now, and you know, this is the best way to support the studio and make this a viable thing for us. And so yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of like basic 101 kind of stuff, but that's kind of, you know, we're still at 101 status.
Overlooked, right? So a lot of the simplest things are also the most overlooked things. You know, like I guess this does lead on to like marketing and stuff. We see a lot of developers that I know of have released their game and wondered why they haven't, like, you know, got got many sales, and it's because they haven't built up their community, and they haven't, you know, they haven't given back to the community either. Like, it's either one of those. I notice a lot of developers, they sort of just use their community rather than, I guess, not taking advantage of. That's literally the same thing. Rather than trying to give back to the community as well as
Right. Yeah.
I don't
Fostering
think.
those relationships for sure, you know, and kind
Mhm.
of like, you know, making it something that's more personal and not just, I mean, because consumers are used to being used by the AAA industry. And, you know, and that's why gamers come from the AAA gaming sector to the indie gaming sector, is because, you know, they can talk with the devs and get to know them on a personal level and kind of be involved with the project and offer feedback that actually in real time gets added to the game. And, you know, if we're not doing that, then we're kind of missing the entire point of being an indie developer.
Mhm. Yeah. I think a lot of gamers do move on to indie games because, you know, AAA titles, they literally they use the community for their financial gain. That's what it is. It sounds it sounds terrible, but sadly it's like the truth. I don't think I've really seen a AAA studio try to make a game like that gives back to the community. You know, you have like loot boxes and stuff. You have in-app purchases. You have like whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
whilst, you know, that's good for some people do like to invest their money into those sorts of things. You know, it's also something that we as indie developers should try to limit as much as we can. Obviously, there's like, we need to make our money as well, but, you know, um, if it's not gonna help the community, then don't put it in, right? That's
Right.
If it's not gonna help the community to, I don't know, do what they want to do, then don't put it in. Like obviously, like adverts in mobile games, for example, uh, you know, obviously indie developers have to put that in because it's a free app. How else are they going to earn money, right? But
Mm-hmm.
there's certain things you can do to limit the amount of ads that the developers do see, because obviously, you know, people aren't going to just want to have ads every time they die or whatever, because if they're just starting out and they die
Yeah, it'll
and they,
get
they get
really
one ad,
annoying.
yeah. So that's like one of the changes I made recently. I made it so, you know, every 3 times you die you get an ad. So you give the option to do what, I guess you can give the option, but you can't like force it upon them, if that makes sense. um
Yeah, and I mean,
like
even
AAA
more than
titles,
that,
they, you know, AAA titles, they force it. They like shove it in your face, and they're like, "Hey, buy
yes.
this."
Um, yeah, I mean, you know, the AAA studios are, and you know, they have to make a living. So I'm not dogging on them, but it's all about the bottom line. You know, if it's not going to make money, then we're not going to invest time and effort into it. And I think really the bread and butter of our indie game industry is that we can build relationships with our players on a one-on-one level. Like I said, with Ben Tristram, you know, being on a personal level with me, you know, 500,000 students, and he responds to each individual student that reaches out to him. Or, you know, he makes sure that somebody on the team reaches out to him at least. Um, you know, and for us as indie game developers to offer our players that same kind of relational level, and also to inspire our players. You know, there are very few in AAA studios that create games that are as inspiring and unique as indie games are.
Mm.
And you know, to play those games and be inspired by those games, and not just inspired to play those games, but inspired to also be a creator yourself. So many indie games inspire people to want to be creators, and so I think that really kind of fuels the major dichotomy between indie games and AAA, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I do get where you're coming from. Um, what else is there to mention? Is there anything else you want to add about Battle Siege Royale? Because obviously we haven't really spoken
Yeah,
about
we
it too
haven't really
much.
talked about the game very much. We've been talking about. I imagine most of your audience is developer, right? Developer
Yeah, I mean
based.
a lot of them are, and some of them aren't as well. So you know, it's a mix of both.
Okay. Yeah. So Battle Siege Royale, like I was saying, it's a battle royale game, but it's got some dynamics to it that make it a bit unique. Instead of a first-person shooter, it's actually a siege game. So you select between a ballista, a catapult, or a trebuchet, which is basically like a giant catapult with a counterweight. And what you do is you go around and you try to destroy these other siege weapons. So you play as one siege weapon, just to clarify. It's not like a real-time strategy like Age of Empires where you have like 30 units. It's you have your one siege weapon. And you go around on the map and you try to destroy each individual player until there's just you left, and then you're the winner. But what makes it interesting is that you know how most battle royales have a circle shrinking map that gets smaller and smaller to close the players in together. Well, our map shrinks, but it only shrinks when a kingdom is conquered. When that kingdom's conquered, that kingdom slowly disappears off the map. So if I go over to your castle and I start sieging your castle while you're out hunting other people, or you come and start sieging my castle while I go to try to siege your castle, and you successfully destroy my castle, my part of the map is now blocked off, and the whole game map gets smaller because that part of the map is now gone. And that also hurts me because in my kingdom, by my castle, I have a blacksmith that heals my siege weapon. And I also have, I have a blacksmith that reloads my weapon. So they like if I have a ballista, I go to the blacksmith to get more bolt. Or if I have a catapult, I go to the blacksmith to get more giant steel balls. And you also have a chapel on your kingdom where you go and get healed or repaired, you know. So each building is destructible, and if somebody destroys your blacksmith but they don't successfully destroy your castle, you still have your kingdom, but now you can't reload. And if they destroy your chapel but they don't destroy your castle or your blacksmith, you can still reload but you can't heal, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
I think I may
that's
have
kind
actually
of
seen your game on Twitter. I'm like it's ringing a lot of bells.
yeah, we've been pretty active on Twitter, sharing lots of screenshots and videos of gameplay and whatnot. We have a Steam page up that people can wish list. We're going to offer a free demo to the wider community December 25th, 2019. Anybody can play the demo. It's going to be the base map that we started out with. The full release of the game, we haven't really nailed down a price point yet, but we're thinking somewhere between $20 and $30. That's going to include multiplayer. That's going to include 15 map modes. And yeah, so that's kind of the rundown of our game. You know, it's obviously a medieval castle siege game with battle royale mechanics. It's kind of fun to go around, shoot things, watch them, you know, launch with funny physics and stuff.
Yeah. I think it's quite crazy because yeah, like as it rings bells, it's sort of just like, you know, speaking to me that like how much of a relationship you can build with your audience, right? Because usually you wouldn't really like recognize things like this if but you know it is crazy that actually thinking about it I remember a lot of what you're just talking about right there.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. I mean now that I'm thinking about it, you know, I've probably scrolled through it and like sort of like clicked on it at least. I'm not sure if I don't know, it's weird. It's like that's the other problem with Twitter though, is you know some things are clouded by other things and you have to make, you know, visual things to make it stand out, right? You know, like that's
Absolutely.
what I've noticed, that my my tweets with like videos on them, for example, they obviously, they stand out and people are like, oh. And I do a lot of progress reports on my Twitter, and people like give me feedback and stuff, so which is really helpful, because obviously I I need to make sure the game will be perfect and stuff like that. So yeah, it's really good to see.
Well, yeah, I'm glad that our game has been able to reach your eyes, and that's a good sign that people are at least recognizing it. We're still relatively early on in development. Early access is December 25th, 2019, and so that'll just be our base map mode. We still have a lot of work left to do, and the more that we have people play test it, and the more that we get feedback, the more we're gonna kind of try to make this a game that people want to play, obviously, because that's the challenge, right?
Yeah, that's you gotta make sure that it appeals to players. Yeah, that's one thing that some developers just sort of disregard, and they sort of go over like how they think, which is really biased, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is about it, because right now it's like we're clutching at straws.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you enjoyed yourself. That's the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I always love doing these.
Would you like to advertise anything at all?
I just want to say thanks to a few people. Thanks to IndieDB. They featured us a couple of times. They do a lot for the indie development sector. Want to thank Ben Tristan with Game Dev TV, and I want to thank my wife, who, without her support, I wouldn't even be trying this. It's a crazy idea for a 31-year-old man with a wife and a baby to, launch a game studio, and for her to, offer the support that she has. It's been pretty instrumental in the direction and success.
Yeah, well, everyone that's watching, make sure that you do go wishlist the game on Steam, and go support them on Kickstarter if you can. Also follow them on Twitter and everything. All the links will be in the description, so you don't have to search anything up. Okay, see you later.
All right, thank you.